longer. However, we are not the only ones that are taking difficult decisions at this juncture, as history demands that we do. President Trump of the United States also understands that the time has come to reverse a dynamic which is leading the United States towards a disaster, and we know that as a disaster in the United States is a global disaster. His unflinching and successful policy in terms of halting illegal immigration makes that conviction more than clear. He knows that he must do what's necessary, even though many may not like it, before it's too late. In other countries, for example, it's already too late to take the decisions he has. That's not only what's important. What Donald Trump is also doing is restructuring the terms of international trade in an unprecedented fashion. That's a titanic task which gets to the very core of the global economic system, because that system has been gnawing away at the industrial heart of his country, and the country now has a unparalleled debt crisis. Furthermore, he's undertaking a cleaning up of the institutional capture of the American state, because it's being infiltrated by left-wing factions that were seeking to undermine any reform program that was necessary. Both I and Donald Trump know what we're doing in the face of these challenges. All of these challenges have a common denominator that all countries, including supranational organizations, must address. They must find a way of creating dividends for the future and not succumb to the temptation of dealing with the present. This is something that major nations, Western nations, have been aware of and putting into practice for decades. We need to get back to that. We need to go back to our roots. We need to tackle priorities first, and that needs to go hand in hand with the idea that you need to do what's difficult but right and prioritize that over and above what's easy and comfortable. As I previously said, this also stands for international organizations that have gradually been integrating such actions into their ecosystem. I think I speak on behalf of all of you when I say that the UN must lead the charge when it comes to this paradigm shift. They must return to the roots that made it the great organization that it once was in the past. I wish to humbly lay before you as an assembly 4 principles that we think might serve as we seek to achieve the aforementioned goal. 1. The principle of a core mandate. The central mission of the United Nations is to preserve international peace and security. Everything else must be viewed as complementary to or in service of that goal. The strategic management of resources of this institution consequently requires that we stick to our priorities and not take on others. Secondly, the principle of international subsidiarity. The UN must tackle an issue solely when it is patently clear that the problem demonstrably exceeds national capacity for action. In all other cases, it is right and proper to return the initiative to states. They are the ones who have the democratic legitimacy and answer to their peoples. 3. The principle of institutional efficiency. Argentina has undertaken a process whereby it seeks to optimize the state. We've eliminated redundant structures and returned resources to taxpayers. In the same way, we believe that the UN requires a similar journey. That requires conducting reliable audits, closing ineffective programs, the consolidation of agencies into single bodies, and financing tied to real achievement. 4. The principle of normative simplification and streamlining. Peace is not only the absence of conflict, it requires prosperous societies. International cooperation must not transform into an obstacle for economic growth and an obstacle to the creation of opportunities. Consequently, we can only and must only support initiatives that do not stymie states' capacities to lead their own production and productive efforts to attract investment and foster trade that are the right way to reduce poverty. These principles will be highly valuable, we believe, in terms of getting our organization back on course so it can stand the test of time and produce tangible results over time. To conclude, I want to raise 4 sensitive and crucially important issues for the Argentine Republic. Firstly, I wish to reiterate our legitimate claim and irrenunciable claim in terms of sovereignty over the Malvinas, South Georgia, South Sandwich Islands, and the surrounding maritime areas that continue to be illegally occupied. In spite of the fact that 80 years have elapsed since the creation of this organization, colonial situations such as this one remain unresolved. For this reason, we call upon the United Kingdom to resume bilateral negotiations in accordance with Resolution 2065 of this very same General Assembly, together with all relevant subsequent resolutions. Secondly, I wish to once again roundly reject expressions of fundamentalist violence that continue to be seen and that are spreading throughout the world. In Argentina, we already suffered this horror with the attacks against the Israel embassy and La Amia in 1992 and 1994, respectively. For this reason, we urge the international community to strengthen legal cooperation to guarantee that Interpol and its signs are respected and those responsible for such atrocities are brought to justice. That will help us to ultimately be able to heal this painful wound that plagues our country's history. Thirdly, we're witnessing an unacceptable escalation in political violence on the left at a global level, violence that in Argentina we know only too well. It is unacceptable to use force where reason fails. For this reason, we emphatically reject any procedures which essentially undermine the basic norms of democratic peaceful coexistence. 4, to the situation of the Argentine citizen Nahuel Gallo, who was abducted and detained arbitrarily in Venezuela without charge, with no legal assistance or consular assistance. In simple words, this is a forced disappearance. We demand that the Venezuelan government release him immediately, and we appeal to the international community so that this legitimate claim is heeded. This in defense of the most basic principles of international law and human dignity. Finally, we reiterate our demand for the immediate release of the hostages which remain captive in Gaza. Finally, may God bless the free world. May the forces of heaven accompany us. Thank you.